Welcome to the Bill Sang Podcast. My name is Bill Sang, and I got a very important topic to talk to you about today. And it's something that's been bothering me for quite some time now. And I've been wrestling with it. I've been wanting to talk about it, but not wanting to talk about it. It's a huge risk for me to talk about this on today's show because it is something that has gotten people banned from their platforms even. But me, being a well-skilled speaker and an expert on being able to communicate with people, that is not going to happen to me because I know how to talk about these things. I've listened to lots of people talk about them and not get banned, and I am going to be among their ranks and not those who get banned. And the topic we have for today is the 2020 election results. It really bothers me, everything that has gone on since the 2020 election. And yes, I'm talking about the presidential election. As we know, that there is also senators and so forth. There were Congress people that were elected as well. Very, very controversial election that day. But there's been so much that's bothered me about it because, in large part, because people are not allowed to talk about their feelings and the evidence that they have seen regarding the 2020 election results. Something else that people have forgotten, and I want to bring this to the forefront right now before I forget, because I keep on forgetting about it, is the protests that didn't happen on January 6th, but happened on November 4th in Washington, D.C. These existed. You can look it up and find it that there were protests in Washington, D.C. that day. What you will not see, though, and I remember seeing this distinctly on television, was that there was protests outside of the White House when it was projected, and again, I'm saying projected, that Donald Trump was going to win that night before midnight. There were rioters outside of the White House trying to tear down the fence in front of the White House. It was madness. And if you want to talk about insurrection, that was an attempted insurrection right there. They claimed it was a get out the vote sort of campaign and saying, make every vote count every vote. That is not what was happening. In fact, these protests weren't just happening in Washington, D.C. that day. They are happening all across America, and there are many arrests. There is lots of violence, and this was an attempted coup by certain parties, and it truly was an attempt to interfere with democracy. Now, I'm not talking about January 6th right there. I'm talking about November 4th of 2020. I believe it's 2020. That had been the election year, correct? 2020? November the 4th for the 2020 election. It was absolutely insane what all happened right there. What I find particularly offensive, and I don't like using that word, but it is offensive about what we are told we are and are not allowed to think about the 2020 election, is the fact that in 2016, you remember when Donald Trump defeated Hillary Clinton in 2016, there was an attempt to overturn the results of that election. Do you remember that? I remember very well. What it revolved around was the idea that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, which was true. She did win the popular vote. And in fact, it boiled down to I believe LA County, I believe it was in California, and it boiled down to New York City as well. The votes from those two areas were enough to give Hillary a popular vote count lead, which is why we have the Electoral College. And the Electoral College is in existence so that each state actually has a voice and a say inside of what happens for the United States presidential election. It wouldn't be fair if all the candidates had to do was to go to LA County and New York City and campaign, and whoever wins those two areas wins the entire country, when the entire country doesn't agree with those two areas. In fact, you look at any electoral map, you will see that the majority of the country in terms of the number of states are red, which means they are Republican-leaning states. So that's a big deal. And what the attempt was back then, for one, they brought up the whole Russian collusion thing to try to say that Donald Trump illegitimately won the 2016 election, and therefore he was not a legitimate presidential, well, he was not legitimately elected as president. But when that didn't stick, what they tried to do is they tried to say that, okay, well, since Hillary Clinton won the Electoral College, since Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, we need to change the system so that these people that voted, the electorates, the people that were casting the votes for the Electoral College, will change their votes for their states so they will not cast their electoral vote for Donald Trump, but instead for Hillary Clinton. And they thought they could sway enough people to be able to change their votes in order for Hillary to win that election. You all remember that, right? And it was a huge deal. In fact, after that, you had a 2-year investigation, not because of the popular vote, but because of the whole Russian collusion narrative. They thought they could get Donald Trump impeached. So very offensive to me that they think that they're allowed to claim these things and then basically nullified 2 years of President Trump's presidency for the sake that they just didn't like him being elected as the president, and they wanted to find some way to get him out without any basis. Everything fell through the cracks. Nothing stuck because nothing they said were true. What I can't say on this podcast is that I cannot say that there is no way that Joe Biden got 81 million votes on Election Day. And first of all, no, I can't keep on going on with that. I cannot say that Joe Biden, did I say Joe Biden before? Either way, I am not allowed to say that Joe Biden did not get 81 million votes on Election Day. I'm not allowed to say that. I can believe that all I want, but I'm not allowed to say that. Why is that? I don't think that's right. I cannot say that even though Donald Trump broke his previous record in the election for a number of votes that were counted, that he did not win. I cannot say that that should have been sufficient for him to have won that election. What I can say is no other president in history has achieved that, where they have gotten more votes the second time through and then lost the presidential election. The way it normally goes is if you get fewer votes than the previous time you're elected, you lost. And that's not always the case, but it's never happened where a president has gotten more votes in their second run for president and lost. First time in all of history. Very suspicious. What happened in 2020? And this is very serious. There's a tactic used. It's called flood the zone. But I'm not allowed to talk about this. I'm not allowed to tell you how the strategy of the left was to flood the zone. I'm not going to go over all the different avenues that were taken. But things that you heard about and the media called them crazy were things like Dominion voting machines, voting addresses that didn't exist, dead people voting. There's lots of different, ballot harvesting. That was another big one. There's all sorts of different ways that my side, the right, those that support Donald Trump, have accused the left of using in order to win the presidential election of 2020. And ultimately, what will I say? What will I say regarding that? They got the votes they needed. Do you get what I'm saying? They got the votes that they needed to win that election. Come hook or crook. Hook or crook. Hook or crook. That's what it is. Hook or crook. They got the votes that they needed to win that election. The question was, did they achieve it in a way that did not violate existing United States law. We'll get to that here in a second. What happens a lot of times, I see this a lot of time, this is a tactic by the left, is to do something so far out there, so off the wall, that if it is brought up inside of the media, if it's brought to the public's attention, the Hunter Biden laptop, for instance, remember that? Remember how that story wasn't true and now it is true? Well, that's because that's one of those stories that was so far out there, so crazy, so ludicrous that it couldn't possibly be true. And it was. And now we know it was. We know that it was completely true. Well, another one of those things that happened, remember how the Obama administration was a scandal-free administration? You remember that? How the media said that? Well, maybe you never heard of a little operation called Fast and Furious. And by the way, there are other things other than Fast and Furious. Have you ever heard of Fast and Furious? If not, let me explain to you what Fast and Furious was. It was one of those operations that was so crazy, so conspiracy theory gold, that if you told somebody this was happening, they'd be like, whatever. There's no way Barack Obama would do that. There's no way that Eric Holder would take part in something like this. And yet they did. You know what Fast and Furious was? Eric Holder particularly was involved in this. I cannot say Barack Obama 100%, but he was. He was Eric Holder's boss. I believe Eric Holder, what was his position? I'm trying to remember what his position was exactly. I believe he was the Attorney General, that he was involved in this operation to sell firearms, I think particularly what they would consider assault rifles, to Mexican drug cartels. And what they would do, they were going to track these guns and see where they're used in violent acts. And ultimately, what was the goal of this? It wasn't to catch these cartels. If it was to catch these cartels, they would have caught the cartels because they sold them the guns. But they're going to track to see where these acts of violence have occurred, so that way they could blow up gun violence inside of the media, assault weapon violence inside of the media, because they wanted to pass sweeping legislation to make assault weapons, quote unquote, illegal. Again, what is an assault weapon exactly? But that was their goal. And they were caught in the act. They got in trouble. Eric Holder got held in contempt. And that was pretty much it. Somehow the left is always allowed to get away with these sort of crazy shenanigans. The right isn't even allowed to talk about these shenanigans, and they still get in trouble. So that was something that was just so crazy, so far out there, so unbelievably and immorally reprehensible. And yet, it really happened. Well, that's why I believe in the whole flood the zone idea. That even though I can't talk about it, then the 2020 election, that's what happened. It wasn't one method that happened. And I want you to check out the movie 2,000 Mules by Dinesh D'Souza. 2,000 Mules. 2000 Mules. And you can probably still find that at 2000mules.com. So go to 2000mules.com, check out the movie 2000 Mules, and you'll get some insight into one of the methods that was actually reported. There was actually there's solid evidence of what had happened on election night in 2020. Another solid piece of evidence to the idea that there is some strange things happening November 4th of 2020 and afterwards. Pennsylvania lawmakers have ruled, or judges, either way, the officials, I'll say, in Pennsylvania have determined that voter laws in Pennsylvania were violated during the 2020 election. Enough so, I probably can't even say the next words that are about to come out of my mouth. But fill in the blanks. Pennsylvania voter laws were violated in such a degree that if these laws were not violated, what would have happened? You know what would have happened. Because it would have made a big difference in how votes were counted. This is verified. but nothing's going to be done about it. It's too late. Nothing's going to be done about it because we are too hasty in casting judgment and thinking that we needed to verify election results before the investigations could be done, before states could make determinations on what happened with their laws. So you can understand why it is that I'm so bothered by this. And again, I don't know. Maybe I already crossed the line here. I would not be talking about this if I did not sincerely believe it inside of my heart. And I'm willing to concede that in past election cycles, Barack Obama, he beat John McCain, he beat Mitt Romney, and I remember I heard a great line about Tom Brady during Deflategate when they were playing a team, they beat them, and this team exposed that the balls were not properly inflated. And I heard one commentator said that Tom Brady could have been throwing flat footballs, and they would have destroyed this team anyway. So that's kind of how I feel about those two elections. That they were overwhelmingly in favor of Barack Obama. That's just how it was. Donald Trump, that was an obvious one. People were fed up with the establishment. 2020, something's just not adding up there. And I don't know how to talk about it. I don't know where my boundaries are as far as what I can say and what I can't say. And I don't have a huge platform right now. And I want to make people aware that there are a lot of things. And mind you, I haven't even scratched the surface yet. There is so much I would like to dive into in regards to that. But I don't know where that line is, what I can and cannot say in relation to the 2020 election and the 2020 election of results. What I do know is I am not allowed to say there is no way that Joe Biden got 81 million votes. I'm not allowed to say that Joe Biden is no way more popular than Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and Hillary Clinton. Not allowed to say those things, so I'm not going to say those things. But I'd like to thank you for joining me for tonight's Bill Sang podcast. Our goal, 1,000 subscribers on Rumble, 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to check out our Buzzsprout channel, as well as iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and so forth. Like, share, and subscribe, and have a great day.